So I've got a real treat for you today. My name's Joel Hargis with the Florida Aviation Network, and we're shooting a bit of a documentary, although I like to refer to it as a trip down memory lane. I'm here with Jack Hallett. Jack Hallett is a World War II fighter pilot. Jack flew D-Day in a P-38. He flew the Battle of the Bulge in a P-47. I think he had 104 missions in the European theater. I actually got to know Jack from my wife. My wife is a barber, and she cuts Jack's hair. And she had been telling me about this World War II guy for some time. And so I finally made arrangements to meet him here at the Leesburg International Airport, where we're shooting this trip down memory lane for Jack today. And I got to know Jack, and he started rattling off all of the different airplanes that he flew during his training and through World War II, and then even after that, he did some instruction in the 50s. And as I got to know him, well, the thing that I knew that I wanted to do is I wanted to fly with this guy. I wanted to take this guy up in my airplane. I fly a Mooney. I fly this Mooney sitting right behind us. And so one afternoon we figured it out, and I couldn't think of where to go or what to do. And so we got Jack in the airplane, and Jack was 94 years old at the time. So I've named this show Flying with Jack Hallett, 94 to 100. And that's what you're going to see is the different airplanes and pilots that he's flown with during that time. So we crawl in the Mooney, and we head out to the practice field, because I figured he just don't want to fly cross country. He's probably going to want to go up, and I wanted to watch him, let him fly the airplanes, really what I wanted to do. And so we got up, and we did Shondels and Lazy Eights, because the Mooney is not aerobatic. And again, he hadn't flown. I think he had flown a 172 15 or 20 years prior, something like that. But we did Shondels and Lazy Eights, and those are, again, non-aerobatic maneuvers. And I said, well, you want to do it? And he says, you show me first. And so I flew a couple, and he's like, no, that's not exactly how you want to do that. And so then I let him fly the airplane, and like our first Shondell, we were almost on the knife edge, and he came around, but perfectly coordinated turns. It was unbelievable. He flew him and actually gave me a lesson in aerobatic maneuvers that day. Do you remember that, Jack?
I do.
And did you have fun that day?
I did. I had a lot of fun that day.
The Mooney flies pretty good.
Yeah. All I needed to know from you was what airspeed to start at.
Right.
And we went on from there.
We did, and Jack did an incredible job. And we, I don't know, we were out 30 or 40 minutes doing that, right? Mm-hmm. And we got back, and we landed the airplane, and we got out. And do you remember what you said to me when we got out of the airplane?
No.
Oh, I remember distinctly. He got out, and he says, that was fun, but I want to fly aerobatics. And I'm like, okay, the 94-year-old guy wants to fly upside down. And so as you'll hear in our trip back memory lane, that he has gotten to fly aerobatics many, many times since then, when he was 94, and now when he's 100, actually a little over a month over 100, right, Jack?
Yes.
And it's a pretty good story, don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to show you today. Stay tuned. Jack Hallett, Flying with Jack Hallett, 94 to 100. So after Jack had flown with me that day in the Mooney, the thing he said as he got out, I'm like, how was that, Jack? And Jack said, well, that was fun, but I want to fly aerobatics. And I said, well, we've got aerobatics on the field. And so we actually had an aerobatic on the field, training right there at the time, and that's wing over aerobatics. And one of those aerobatic instructors is Kathy Hirtz. So Kathy, how did Jack find you?
Okay, my name's Kathy Hirtz, and I started wing over aerobatics when I learned to fly at 48. And I wanted to buy, this was my first airplane, the Zlin, which is fully aerobatic, and then I wanted to move up to the pits, and so I started wing over aerobatic so that I could hire Steve as my instructor, and we gave aerobatic lessons and unusual attitude courses in Oregon, and that's how I got started. I actually did air shows as well for 7 years in the pits, and had a ground level waiver as well. So I have a little bit of a history. And anyway, we moved to Florida because Oregon doesn't have the best weather for flying, and we had a lot of students coming to us, especially with the Zlin. So anyway, we moved here to Florida, and we set up our business here, Wing Over Aerobatics. And Jack, his son, bought him a exploratory flight in a 172 at Sun Air. And anyway, he was driving by and he saw our sign and he thought, wow, I'd like to try aerobatics again. It's been over 50 years, I think, since I've done it, and I want to see if I could still do it. So he stopped in and we started talking, and he kind of wanted to go up in the pits, but he was nervous about the G-force, if he could handle that. So he said, well, let me go up in the Zlin. So we went up in the Zlin, and I'll never forget it because it was 6 years ago, and he had just got his driver's license renewed. He was 94, and they renew it for 6 years, and so he was excited to do this. He actually bought a new car because he thought, if they're going to let me drive till I'm 100, I need a new car. So he bought the car that he always wanted, and he said, I must be optimistic because I got the extended warranty on the car as well. So anyway, so we went up in the Zlin, and Steve had a student that day in the pit, so he went up as well. So Jack wanted to do the aerobatics in the Zlin, and the Zlin is a great aerobatic airplane. It's fully aerobatic, has an inverted system and everything. So we went off. He did the takeoff, and we started doing the easier maneuvers, wing over, hammerhead, lazy 8 till he got used to the airplane. Then we did some loops, Cuban 8. And Steve was flying with his student, so we decided we would form up and do some formation flying. Jack did a lot of formation flying in his training, and he just pulled right up to the S2B and flew wing on the S2B with the Zlin. And that's not an easy feat because the pits is very high performance and fast, and the Zlin is much lower performance and slow. So he did really well. He just stayed right on his wing, and we did some wing overs and turns and steep turns, and he just did an incredible job. And of course he had to pick apart everything he did, like he should have done it perfectly after not flying for 50 years of aerobatics, but he did outstanding job. And the one thing that really impressed me is in the Zlin, I did a lot of teaching in the Zlin, and I'd always tell people on a loop, dive to 140 knots and pull up. Jack dived, I told him that, but he didn't listen. He dove it to like 127, pulled up, and I thought for sure he was going to stall it on top. He just pulled it around, didn't get to buff it or anything. It was the smoothest loop, and I just was shocked, but he's an incredible pilot.
So, Jack, grab that microphone there. Did you have any anxiety at all about jumping in that airplane and doing that? Do you have any anxiety?
Not really. I just wondered if I could still do the maneuvers. She gave me hell because I was picky on myself. I'd have a wing a little bit low when I'd come out of a loop or something. And she'd give me hell. She'd stop being so damn picky, I think is what she said. But anyway, no, I wasn't too worried about it. I just wanted to make sure that I did things right. And it had been so long since I'd flown, and I was so happy to fly. She's a hell of an instructor. Anybody that wants lessons, this is a place to go if she still wants to do it, because Kathy can flat fly an airplane.
So did you come out with any aspirations to fly other things?
Yeah, she asked, why were you worried about G-forces? And I said, because I didn't know at this age if I could take it. And as I recall, she said, well, we pulled 4 Gs. And I said, we did? And she said, yeah. She said, did you have any effects? And I said, no, it didn't bother me at all. And she said, you wouldn't pull any more than that if you flew with Steve in the pits. So I said, really? She said, yeah. And I said, well, okay. So then I think I set up to go in the pits with Steve. So that's when I flew with Steve, set up a date to go with Steve.
So I have one other story that I'm aware of that I want to start with you and probably let Kathy finish. And that is, I think when you were about 97, may have been the 97th birthday, you went up and did night aerobatics in the Zlin. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was Kathy's birthday present for me.
Wow, what a present.
It was a full moon, and I hadn't been up at night flying except airline. And the difference was back in the 50s when I'd flown at night, the individual towns were individual towns. Like Winter Haven was separated from Lakeland and Lake Wales and all of those. Now it's all one big mass of lights. So when you do a maneuver, you can line up on this road that's north-south, and when you do, let's say, a loop, you can back out on the line, but you're not sure it's the same damn road you started on. But you're parallel, so it's okay. But so then Kathy said, I'm going to try something. So she's going to do a barrel roll around the moon. And I said, there's no way in hell you're going to, because the moon is, I figured, as I recall, somewhere around 60 degrees above the horizon. So I said, oh, yeah, sure you are. Damned if she didn't do it. I mean, the moon is sitting, and damned if she didn't do it. It was beautiful. She did a barrel roll around the moon at 60 degrees above the horizon.
So would you do that again? You like
oh,
that
hell
night
yeah.
aerobatics?
It was beautiful. Full moon with all the lakes and everything. It was beautiful. It was a hell of a birthday present. One of the best birthday presents probably I've ever had in my life. It was just gorgeous.
Well, that's a great story. So hand that back to Kathy. So Kathy, what inspired you to take him flying for night aerobatics? I mean, that's kind of a...
Well, I just love flying at night and aerobatics at night because most people think that it's scary, but in reality, during the daytime, when you're doing aerobatics, you're really looking at the ground for reference of where you are. And the ground is all kind of monotone. It looks pretty much the same. It's hard to distinguish things. So it's hard to judge your height. And then the sky is bright, but that doesn't matter because you're not really going up, you're coming down. But at night, it's just the opposite. The sky is black, who cares? The ground is all lit up. Of course, I like to do it where there's lights.
Right.
So you see all the lights, and it's really easy to judge where you are and your distance. And I just love doing loop, which he did over a road. So you have a nice road, usually one that has a lot of cars, and it's just the coolest thing. As you come down the back of that loop, you just sort of see there's your road, and you see all the cars, you see the headlights going one way and the tail lights going the other way, and it's just the neatest thing to just kind of come right around and go into your next maneuver, and it's just a ball. So I wanted to do something really special for his 97th birthday, and that's what I came up with, and he just had a ball. He loved it. He just loved it. And then on his 99th birthday, we're kind of jumping ahead, but the 99th birthday, we had just bought a Sea Ray.
Oh.
And the Sea Ray is an amphibian, so it's land and water, and it doesn't have pontoons. It actually has a hull, so you're actually sitting in the water when you land, and it's sort of like a speedboat or a jet ski or something like that, because you're in the water and you're moving in the water, not above the water like a float plane with pontoons. So I wanted him to experience that, and he was actually my first passenger.
Oh, wow.
My first passenger. So I had to go up to Michigan to get the Sea Ray, and flew it back. Took 22 hours with a trainer, flying it back, and learned all kinds of stuff. When I was ready, I said, Jack, I want you to be my first passenger. Would you go with me? And of course, he'll do anything. Yeah, he was eager to go. So we went up in the Sea Ray, and we did some really nice landings over at Lake Weir, just nice and smooth. And Steve was in another Sea Ray, and he videoed it. So we have pictures, video and pictures of his ride. And then we turned it into a jet ski. and just did some circles and S-turns all over on the lake. And it's just such a thrill because you're actually going like 50 miles an hour in a plane on the water. And Jack says, man, it just feels like a speedboat. So we went over to the Ocklawaha River. We landed there, and then we just did speedboat all the way down to Griffin, and he just had a ball. And when we got back, we interviewed him a little bit, and I said, well, he'd flown a Mustang. I don't know if you're gonna. So we got him a Mustang flight because he hadn't done that. But anyway, so I said, well, how does this compare to the Mustang? And he said, oh, this was much better. He liked it much better.
Wow, better
So
than a
the
P-51
ultimate.
Mustang. That's
Yeah, and the
that's
video
really
is
saying
on
something.
YouTube if you want to look it up.
Okay. Well, we'll
under
have to
Jack
go check
Hallett
that
and
out.
the Sea Ray, yeah.
Jack Hallett in the Sea Ray. Well, that's great. What an incredible story. Obviously, you guys have become great friends, and I know you hang out, and yeah, you've had a lot of experiences with these guys, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely.
You want to say something?
Yeah, on landing, I thought this is where I'm going to die because there was no flare out. And I figured, well, I'm 100, so it doesn't really make any difference. And if she wants to die, that's fine. But but the landing was absolutely perfect. But there's not a flare out like you'd make in a land airplane or anything. And I figured, well, she's got the airplane, and who am I to correct her on landing? I don't have a water license, so she knows what she's doing. And the landing was absolutely beautiful. And like she said, we landed the first time and spun around in the lake. I figured, well, she's going to ground loop this damn thing, or water loop, whatever you call it. But you could spin the thing around, and it was more fun. You're not going at high speeds. I think 90 is about as fast as the damn thing will go. But it was such fun. Even at low speeds, it was fun. It was just a wonderful time in an airplane. You have all these lakes around here. It's a perfect airplane for this area. And it was just a lot of fun.
Wow. Great stories. So the next show or segment that we're going to bring you is flying in the Wolf Pits S2B on Jack's 95th birthday.
So here I am with Jack Hallett, 95th birthday, and his favorite airplane was a P-38, which he flew in combat during World War II. And he's up front here, and we're going to go fly the pits. And he's going to do the aerobatics, and we're going to go have some fun. Okay, here we go. Right up and around. A little harder pull. There you go. Just keep it coming around. That's it. Just a Scotia right rudder there. That'll keep you nice and straight. There's the line. That's it. And right back around and out, and you've got it. Much better. Look at your speed now, see? And our altitude, we're doing good because we dove down to about 4,000, so you did good. Isn't that fly nice? Yeah, it's beautiful. And it comes right on around good in the 180. It'll hang right in there. Does this remind you a little more of flying a fighter? What do you think? Oh, I love it. I'm just having a wonderful time. Okay. Right on up, roll. Now just slightly forward. Now a little right rudder and it'll come right around. Look at that. Isn't that much better? Yeah, but I wiggled it. That's okay. There we go. Right up and around now. Fairly quick. Bring it all the way around till you see the horizon. A little bit of right rudder now. Just a little. There you go. Okay, now roll it right out. And you got it. And just fly away. Isn't that nice? Yeah. Looks clear. I like your turn here. Okay, we got lots of speed. Right up and around now. Now we're going to come all the way around until the nose is well below the horizon. Just keep coming. Just keep coming right on down. Keep coming till you see a lot of dirt. More. Now just roll it right out. And there's the ground. See? How about that? One more and you'll This is my baby. Oh, the wonderful airplane. I'm thrilled. That's my chute, isn't it? Wow. This does a great wing over. Like we just wanted to pull up and do a climbing turn and back down the other side. Try that. Just bring the nose right on up and then just pull it right on way up there. There you go. And it just comes right back. Now just let the nose fall down through the horizon. A little right rudder and just let it drop. There you go. Now wings level. And just bring the nose way up before you start a left turn now. Take the nose way up. Take it right up for the heavens. There you go. And this will just zoom way up here. Now you just let it drop through. Isn't that sweet? Oh, it's beautiful.
So here we are, going to tell you a great story about Jack's 95th birthday. And we actually did this on his 95th birthday. I came out to the airport to watch it. Steve Wolf offered to fly him in the S2 pits that you see here behind us. Steve, tell us about what inspired you to take Jack flying in the pits on his birthday.
Well, I've always loved the history of World War II and finding out that Jack was a World War II pilot, and then talking to Kathy how well he flew. And then when he flew formation on it, I never saw anybody that hadn't flown an airplane 50-some years stay on a wing like that.
Wow.
So he was really did a good job. So I was really looking forward to flying with him. And the pits is a little more demanding than the Zlin, and you pull a little more G's because it's higher speed and stuff. And I just knew when I met Jack and he said he flew in World War, I said, "You flew in World War II?" And he said, "Well, we wrecked a lot of airplanes then, you know." And that was his first comment. And I thought, well, this is pretty good. And he also had that "I'm no hero." He said, "We had a job to do. We did the job. We came back, and here I am." So anyway, I just fell in love with his attitude and getting the honor to fly with a World War II vet. You know, it was really something, and I knew the pits would be good. And what a great 95th birthday!
Yeah, and there is a video on YouTube of this. It's called Jack Hallett 95, and because you had a couple GoPro cameras in there and you narrated that whole flight, and we're going to show a little bit of that, I believe, here. But yeah, you just did an incredible job. So how did Jack do that day?
Well, you know, it's kind of funny. We get down toward the end of the runway, get them all buckled in there and fastened down, get them down to the end of the runway here to take off. And I said, "Well, Jack, do you want to do the takeoff?" And he said, "Well, you know, one of the last airplanes, tailwheel airplanes I took off was a P-47 in Germany." So you'll probably hear that on the audio. But anyway, he pulled out on the runway and did the takeoff unaided. I didn't have to help him at all.
Wow.
And then we climbed up. But the most amazing thing I saw was the first maneuver he wanted to do. When we got out here at 4,000 feet in west of Leesburg Airport, we're climbing up. And one of the harder maneuvers to do is what they call a slow roll, where you roll real slow roll rate and stuff. And Jack he asked me on the intercom, can I try a slow roll? And we were still only going about 120 miles an hour in the climb. And I said, "Sure, if you want to, go ahead." And he rolled in, came in with the top, we call it top rudder, the nose stayed up, flew it around about like that to inverted, came all the way around and back straight. Perfect slow roll. The nose never went below the horizon. And I've never had any student do that on their first attempt like that. So I was very impressed. Then he did Cuban-8s and loops and rolls and just had a ball. But when we came back, we had to buzz the field.
Oh, of course, yeah. So hand that mic to Jack. Jack, again, like I say, I've seen some of this video, but tell us what flying the pits is like, because that pits is like you can fly aerobatics and you can be a good pilot, but then there's flying the pits. So tell us about your experience flying the pits.
Well, that was a different airplane altogether because it's so light on the controls and the aileron is so rapid. It's a joy to fly. I don't know how to explain it, but you feel like the airplane is part of you, and you just almost think about what you want to do, and it does it. I find it was easy to coordinate. It just is such fun to fly the airplane because it reacts to every move that you make. And like I said, it's fast on the controls. Its rate of rolls is rapid. To me, even though it's smaller, it's right in line with flying the P-38. The P-38 was big, took some strength to fly, but this airplane is very light on the controls. It's quick. It was fun to fly.
So of course, and getting to fly with Steve Wolf, did you realize when you got in the plane with him what a great aerobatic instructor this guy is?
I had no idea.
And
I had no idea.
And I know from hearing about it, watching the video, I think he actually did a maneuver. As I remember, you guys were up there and Steve says, you want to see the airplane fly backwards. Tell us about that.
Well, Steve has flown every maneuver known to man in an airplane, and a lot of them that I had never been through, and that was one of them. But it was just, again, it was everything we did. It was such a joy to go through, and I can vividly remember almost everything we did that day, and that was one of them. It was just terrific. I didn't know you could do things in an airplane that he did that day.
So hand that mic to him. I want to ask him, what's that maneuver called when you fly backwards?
We call it a tail slide. We go up, throttle back, and then you just drop tail first. And eventually the heavy end will fall down forward. In fact, when my wife Kathy that did the interview that flew with the Zlin, when she started doing air shows, she said, is there any chance doing these at low level that it's just going to stay that way and I'm going to back all the way to the ground? I said, no, the heavy end will always fall down. So I promised her the engine end will always fall down. So when I fell 11 feet off of a deal to the concrete, she said, how did you land on your feet? You got a big head. You promised me the heavy end would fall down. So that was the deal. But that was a fun maneuver. And I think one of my students said about the Pitts the best. After he flew it a little bit, he just went, wow. He says, this is like a gun. You just point and shoot. He says, anywhere I want to go with this airplane, I just move it, point it, hold it, and it just goes. And that's kind of what the Pitts was like.
Yeah. So, Jack, any closing comments about flying with Steve or in the pits?
No, I don't know how to explain it any more than that. It's just, but flying with Steve and flying with Kathy is just, I don't know how to put it. It's just such joy, and I don't know how to put it any different than that.
All right. Well, that is a great story, and just stay with us because he's actually got some more great stories, more incredible flights that he's done in unbelievable aircraft coming up. What are you going to do today?
We're going to fly this airplane, and I'm thrilled. My name is Jack Hallett. In combat, I flew P-38s and P-47s in the 9th Air Force in World War II. I flew top cover during D-Day, and of course during the bulge. In those days, we didn't have jets, so everything I flew was prop aircraft. I still loved flying. I just still get the same thrill I did during those days in 43, 44, 45. So after the war, I instructed at Bartow Air Base teaching Air Force students from 1951 through 1960. And then I hadn't flown at all, and then picked up flying when I was 95, I guess, flying with friends like Orestes, Steve Wolf, and some of these other people. I've just been so fortunate to make friends here since I moved to Leesburg. I'm looking forward to doing some aerobatics.
Big stuff. Pull it. Good. Enough. Landing gear whenever you want. Beautiful. I can see the smile from here. Do you see the mirror? There is a mirror in the front cockpit. To your right, and I see your face from here. Look at that. Up. Now, roll it now. Roll it. Your airplane. Roll it. There you go. Beautiful. Wow. Beautiful. much better. Okay, center right. Beautiful. Oh my goodness, this is so good. Okay, full power, flash 25. Get it off the ground, Jack. Get it off the ground. That's good. Right there, you know. There you go. Get in the center line. Center line, don't forget. 30% now. Yes, there you go, Jack. Keep going. Beautiful, Jack. Beautiful. Really good job, Jack. Really good job. Oh my goodness. It's your airplane, Jack. Okay. Let me tell you, you did amazing. This landing was all yours, let me tell you that. Yes, it was.
Oh, yeah, but thank you so much. It's just...
No, thank you, Jack.
Imagine at 99 years old flying the front seat of this thing. Oh my gosh, that was such fun.
So as we continue on with this story, the next opportunity that Jack had was to actually fly in this airplane behind us, which is an L-39 Albatross with Orestes Lorenzo, which we have with us today. And so Orestes, can you tell us how you met Jack and why you decided to take him up in this bird?
Well, it was one of those days that I came to the hangar, and it happened that Jack was with Steve at his hangar. Just you see, they were facing
With
each
Steve
other.
Wolf. Yeah.
And Steve told me, "Hey, Orestes, I want you to meet a friend of mine," and that was Jack Hallett. So he told me about that. He just flew the pit with Steve, and I asked him if he wanted to fly the L-39. And of course he said yes.
So Orestes,
So we had some fun.
tell us just a little bit about the L-39. How long have you had it, and your experience with this? What is this thing about?
That one was another L-39 that I had since 2009. I sold it, and then I regretted, buyer's remorse. And a year later, I bought this one behind me. It's a similar airplane, basically the same. It's a great bird, a jet. You don't find anything better for the cost to have fun, do aerobatics, fly fast, do formation, whatever you want to do with your friends, and fly with Jack Hallett, of course.
Right. So hand that mic to Jack here. So Jack, looking at this airplane, what did you think when Orestes offered to fly you in this L-39?
My first thought was, what time of day or night, is what I asked him. So we set up a time to fly, and he put me in the front seat. At that time, I didn't need the help I need today because I was more agile. So I sat in the thing, and we went over all the controls, all the switches, buttons, and everything, and it took a while to get used to the front seat, to get used to the cockpit and everything. And away we went. I could not taxi the damn thing because it didn't have foot brakes. It had the typical brake that they use in that type of aircraft. And I would need to practice on a football field that's paved so I wouldn't run into anything. So he taxied it for me. And as I recall, once we did the run-up and everything, and we were cleared, I guess he took me out onto the runway and said, "It's your aircraft." Yeah. So am I right?
Yes.
And so I did the takeoff, and away we went.
Took off the airplane.
Yes.
Never flown a fighter jet like this before. I mean, you've flown a trainer.
I've flown jets, yes. But it was 1960 was the last time I flew. And we took off and headed for the west to the area where we could do some aerobatics and stuff. And I'm trying to think what we did first. What did we do first?
Go ahead, handing that
did
mic.
some
So
turns.
how did he do, Orestes? I mean,
He did excellent. I think he did rolls, barrel rolls, the steep turns, loop, those sort of things, which typical for jets, in aerobatics. And But most remarkable when we landed, and you know, his smile was ear to ear, and I asked, Jack, how was that? And he said, like having sex. He just loved it. I remember that clearly.
And so, subsequently, you've taken him on several flights.
Yes.
You've been lots of places in it, have you not? Where all of you and Jack flown the L-39?
Yeah, we have been in a couple of local air shows, and I'm just flying around for fun. You know, it's just a thrill flying with Jack.
Did he
you know?
Did he get that kind of the hang of the aerobatics and everything?
Absolutely.
His barrel rolls up to snuff and.
Yeah, Jack is a natural pilot. You know, you never forget that. He may forget other things, but not that one. Not flying.
Oh, that's great.
Definitely not. No.
So, Jack, in closing, what would you say about the L-39? Is that a?
Oh, it's such fun. It's a little heavy on the controls for a guy my age, but it's just such absolute fun flying the thing. It's I can't tell you what a thrill it is to get into something like this and fly it. It just I can't tell you what fun it is. It's just wonderful to be able to, at this age, to fly an airplane like this.
Well, that's fantastic, and
Can I say something?
you can say anything.
No.
Please share it with us.
For me, the most rewarding experience I've ever been as a pilot is flying with Jack.
Oh, wow.
Just thinking that the guy at my airplane's controls is the guy that was on D-Day, you know, supporting our troops, you know, during the, you know, in Omaha Beach, and then continue all along the war to the victory in Berlin. That he flew the P-38s in the World War II, and then the P-47, and he kicks German asses, or the fastest asses. That's and still alive and around, man. You know, there is no better. I mean, I'm so lucky. And aside from that, being his friend, I have learned so much from Jack about humility and camaraderie and humor. He definitely has made me a better pilot and a better man, above all.
That's great, and that's coming from a true patriot, because Orestes is a fighter pilot himself, but he wasn't a fighter pilot for us. He was a fighter pilot for Cuba, and he decided to come here. And but he is probably one of the biggest patriots I have ever met, Orestes Lorenzo. Thank you for your time. Next, we're going to show when Jack flew the twin, the Aerostar, one of the fastest piston twins made. Coming up. Well, as the story continues, I'm still here with Orestes Lorenzo and Jack Hallett, and we're in front of Orestes' Twin Aerostar. Now, a Twin Aerostar, I've never had the pleasure to fly in this aircraft, but it's been in some movies and things because it's known for being one of the fastest piston twins made. And so, Orestes, tell us a little bit about the Aerostar.
Well, it's a fairly complex aircraft compared to the L-39, especially because of the multi-engine and the power on those engines, you know, and all the settings. For example, for me, I spend most of the time during the flight, just trying to synchronize those props, you know, and fuel consumption and everything, RPM. And that's my job. If I fly 4 hours, I spend 4 hours doing that. Jack flew with me once to Dayton, Ohio. That was a little bit over 3 hours flight.
Dayton, Ohio. Did you go to the
Ohio,
museum
yes.
up there?
Yes, we went to visit the Air Force Museum. And he took the airplane. It took him 30 seconds to get all those parameters, you know, aligned on something I can ever do right. But he got it right away.
You think that was the P-38 experience, maybe?
Maybe, and it's just been Jack Hallett, I think, you know, the best there is.
So how many flights have you taken, Jack, in this airplane?
Oh, many. We have been in Dayton, Ohio. We have been in the Pensacola Navy Museum. We've been to Miami a couple of times just to have fun, to Key West a couple of times, even with friends, just to go and have fun. That's what we like the most. Just go out, fly, and have fun. That's what we do.
Right. So, Jack, what's it like to fly this airplane? Is this thing as difficult and fast, and is it hard to stay ahead of that airplane, or is it nothing compared to flying a P-38?
Well, it's been a long while since I flew the P-38, but I just thoroughly enjoyed it because we had and flying with this guy is such fun. The first time we were originally going to go to the East Coast for lunch, and I had mentioned that I'd never been to Key West. And he said, "You've lived in Florida since 1951 and you've never been to Key West." And I said, "No." He said, "Okay, then the hell with going to the East Coast. We'll go to Key West for lunch." So that's what we did. And I couldn't believe it. We had a hell of a good time. We landed in Key West.
What'd that take, about 35 minutes from here, probably?
It wasn't much longer than that, as I recall. And we landed there, and we had lunch in the middle of the town in a wonderful restaurant. And it was in a residential area. It was a hell of a good restaurant. And it was a Cuban restaurant, as I recall.
No, it's just it's a Squadron something, a restaurant owned by veterans.
Yeah, it was excellent. And anyway, coming back, we got a taxi. So the taxi driver was a pilot. And when I mentioned to her that the man sitting beside her was the Cuban fighter pilot that brought the MiG to the United States, she almost lost it. She was so excited, and she remembered it vividly when he came. And as I recall, she didn't want to charge us for the taxi ride, but she was thrilled. And so when we came home, I did get to fly. And coming back, he said, she pointed out her fly over the house, so I did, and I dove down. And I was afraid I was a little bit eager with the airplane and the banking and the diving. No. You can't, this is not a fighter. This is a twin-engine plane. Don't fly it like this. I'm afraid my bank was a little bit steep, my airspeed was a little bit fast, and I was a little bit low, so I corrected everything, and we flew back to the field. And I did not land. He did, but we had a wonderful time.
So hand that mic back to Orestes, because I know he wants to talk
You
about it.
realize he was doing that above my house.
Right.
He wanted to impress my wife. Something I would never allow to happen. That's why I told him, no, too much bank. I can't, Jack.
So I know you're always teasing Jack about chasing your wife, Vicky.
Well, he's a dangerous man. But, he's a great friend. I have to appreciate that Jack hasn't comment on my flying the Aerostar, because usually he says, "You suck." when we fly the Aerostar.
Well, that's a great story. So we're going to continue this. And I believe our next one that we're going to talk to is going to be Pat Phillips and Jack flying in the Stearman. So here we go as the story continues. When Jack was about 96, as best as we could recollect, Jack got a chance to fly a Stearman. And a Stearman was a plane of the early 40s. And actually, this is the airplane, not the exact airplane, but this is the airplane that Jack soloed in what I believe was 42. So this is owned by Pat Phillips. We've got Pat Phillips here. Pat, tell us about the Stearman. How long have you had this? I know you got a bunch of Stearman experience.
Okay, first of all, Joel and the Florida Aviation Network, appreciate you having us here on this beautiful day. You picked a great day to be out here and a great day to fly the Stearman. This Stearman actually was built in 1943. As Joel had said, the Stearman started in early 40s, and this particular one was a Navy trainer. It was interchangeable between the Army and the Navy, and most of the pilots that for their initial basic training soloed in the Stearman. And Jack was one of those that soloed in the Stearman. Well, this particular Stearman, after it finished its military service, it actually came to Zellwood, which is just right here in our backyard, and was a crop duster up until the mid-60s. And then I bought it and disassembled it and restored it back as original World War II as we can get. I mean, everything on here, the engine, the propeller, the airframe, everything was original. Stearman, we say Stearman, it's actually a Boeing Model 75 airplane, but it's better known as the Stearman. So we totally restored the airplane, all new nuts and bolts in it, that most of them came from Skybolt, that is hosting us here today. and so everything in the way of hardware was put back into it new, but it's the original World War II instruments, the original World War II airframe and components and engine, and as close as we could get it.
So, original World War II instruments. Not very many instruments. What, airspeed indicator, attitude indicator in there?
Well, no attitude.
No attitude. I didn't think so, yeah.
Airspeed compass and a oil temperature, fuel pressure, oil pressure gauge, which was a standard World War II gauge that we have in there. They're now hard to find.
And Pat, just a little bit about your background. You are a big-time Stearman pilot. You flew air shows in Stearman for several years. Just give us a little bit about that.
Well, I don't know about the big-time part, but I did fly the Stearman in air shows for 25 years. Had an unlimited surface-level aerobatic waiver for about 25 years, and there's probably only 2 of us in the country that had it in the stock Stearman, because the FAA doesn't like to give surface-level aerobatic waivers without an inverted system, but myself and a fellow named John Moore up in Minnesota were the only 2, and right now I don't think there's anybody flying the Stearman and doing low-level aerobatic, the stock Stearman with the 220 Continental doing low-level aerobatics. Most of the ones you see are the have a bigger engine, the Pratt & Whitney R985 or 450 horsepower engine put into it, which it does turns it into a great aerobatic plane and very entertaining, and lots of smoke and lots of noise.
So that's great. So hand that microphone to Jack, because Jack, I know this is a big memory of yours. You, like I say, this was the first airplane you ever crawled into. I want you to tell us, like, from the beginning of getting assigned to the Stearman to your initial lessons. Tell us that story. I know it, and it's a great one. Please tell us.
All right, let me say something about Pat first. He's crazy as hell because he flew this thing when you went inverted, and the one he flew, the engine quit. And nobody with any brains would fly aerobatics in show with an engine that quit, but he did.
Well, apparently a lot of skill, because he's still sitting here, right?
That's what I mean. But it's unbelievable. Every time I think about it, I shake. But he did it anyway. But look at the guy, and it's unbelievable. He's a hell of a pilot, I'll tell you. Anyway, I went to Lafayette, Louisiana, and I soloed in July of 1942. They lined us. We flew up. We were the first class there at Lafayette, and we flew off a dirt floor hangar, off of a grass field, and they lined us all up by height, and 2 of us were left over. They didn't have enough instructors, so my instructor was the assistant director of flying, and he. So we were early. I was early to solo, and I still to this day don't believe I was ready, but I went anyway. And if they changed the tetrahedron, I'd still be up there trying to figure out how to get this damn thing on the ground, because I had a bush. We used a 90-degree power-off approach, and I had a bush that I turned base on and a big rock that I cut my throttle on, and I aimed the airplane. And we had an airspeed indicator, I'm sure. But anyway, I successfully made my solo flight at 8.5 hours. But I was scared to death because it's the most lonely feeling in the world. The instructor sat in the front seat, and when he got out, there's no head up there. So you're scared to death because it's so, all of a sudden you're all by yourself, and you get in the downwind leg, and you say, oh my God, I've got this thing by myself. But I managed to get the thing on the ground through 3 landings safely.
Well, and didn't you tell me at once this is one of the more difficult airplanes that you've ever flown?
I was lousy in primary, and my instructor, George, I can't think of his last name right now, George something, saved my bacon. I went up with on my 18-hour check. I was the second one. Opie Lincoln had previous time. He was the other short guy. So he made it through without any trouble. So I went up with my check ride with a guy, but Second Lieutenant Jimmy Gray, and he pulled a forced landing on me. So I went in, and he poured the gas to it and said, forced land, downwind, So the next time he did it, I went the opposite way and screamed downwind. So I went 90 degrees downwind. I went every degree of the compass, and he was screaming at me downwind. And when we got on the ground, he says, Hallett, you're the most dangerous SOB I've ever flown with in my life. And George wouldn't let him wash me out. He said, well, he kept me in there anyway. And no matter which way I went, he's screaming at me that I was the most dangerous guy he ever flew with. So anyway, I got through that and finally got out of primary, but I was scared to death in that air. I was horrible in that airplane. I got to basic, I was fine, but in that airplane, I was scared of it, but I managed to get through because of George.
That's a great story. Hand that mic back to Pat. I want to ask him a couple questions, because I was there the day that Jack flew the airplane with you, and I remember what you told me when he got out, but I want you to tell everybody, Pat. How did Jack fly that Stearman after, since 42 was the last time he was in one?
I tell you, it's amazing. As we were taxiing out, Jack says, well, let me feel it, see if it feels the same. So he started taxiing out, and he started to do the S-turns the way you're trained. You do S-turns because you cannot see straight ahead. You turn to the left, you have to look out the side so you can make sure the front of you is clear or nobody's running in front of you. So he's doing S-turns, very coordinated, and we taxied out in the runway. So finally asked me if he wanted to make the takeoff. Well, sure he did. Well, he made a perfect takeoff, just like he'd been flying it every day. Well, okay, maybe he got lucky. And we climbed out, and we climbed up to about 1,500 feet. And then Jack says he wanted to do a chandelle, and he wanted to do some lazy eights. And it was just the most beautifully coordinated chandelle and lazy eight I'd seen. Just, again, like he'd just been doing them every day. So we came back, and Jack actually landed. So it was an amazing job, just like he had gotten out of the airplane yesterday.
That's amazing. Jack, you got any closing comments for Pat or anybody about the Stearman?
No, I love it now. Oh, yeah, I do have. If anybody here that hasn't flown an open cockpit, fly it, because it's so different from any other airplane. You can see everything in this wide world with an open cockpit. If you took and closed the cockpit even on a Stearman, it's a whole different feeling. An open cockpit is such fun. So if you get a shot at it, fly it.
Well, I would definitely agree with you, Jack. I've been fortunate to get to fly in a couple Stearmans, and it is that open cockpit experience. There's just nothing like it. So as the story continues, stay with us. We got another good story coming up. So as this story continues, it just gets better and better. So as we've titled this show, it's Flying with Jack Hallett between 94 and 100. I believe there's only one guy that's flown with Jack since he's turned 100, and that's going to be Keith Phillips, sitting here to my right. And he did that in an XS 300. So, all right. So Sierra X-Ray 300, right? So Keith, tell us a little bit about this airplane.
Okay, this is a Swearingen SX 300, and it's a home-built, kit-built airplane. Ed Swearingen, famous airplane designer, designed it, and he built 55 kits in 1985, and then subsequently stopped. There are 51 of them, 31 of them flying.
Okay.
And it's a very fast airplane. It's all metal. A lot of people think it's plastic, but it's not. It's all metal.
So it is an aluminum airplane.
Yes, it is. Uh-huh.
And what power plant is in this plane?
This one, it was originally a 540 Lycoming, 300 horsepower. This one has got a 580, 400 horsepower in it. So
oh my!
It goes a bit faster.
Oh my! Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And fully aerobatic, right?
Yes, it is.
Like positive, negative G in this aircraft?
Yeah, it's a 6G airplane. We don't do a lot of hard 6Gs because it's got a long prop extension, but it's built for 6Gs.
So how did you come to find or hear about or meet Jack Hallett?
Well, I really met him through your chapter and your people.
The local EAA chapter,
Yeah,
which is
523.
534 here at Leesburg Airport.
534, yes, because I know quite a few of the people. And I had also seen him when he got some publicity during the president's spiel, I think, when he was at Sanford, I believe it was. So I knew about him, and then the people over here told me about it. And then we set up a little deal for his birthday. And you want me to tell you about that?
Sure, yeah. So
Well, this was on
because
the-
I remember getting a phone call that
Yeah.
you guys wanted to take him for a ride.
Well, they set up a birthday party for him over at New Smyrna Beach at American Aero. That subsequently got canceled, but we picked him up anyway over here on the 21st and flew him over to Ormond Beach, and then limoed up to destination Daytona, and so that's where we had the 100th celebration. So we came over here with a flight of 4 of these airplanes, and he flew with me back in the lead, and then Steve and Kathy chased us.
Steve and
the
Kathy
Lancer,
Wolf, yeah.
and Wolf, and they took pictures of us on the way back. We landed at Ormond, went to the event, and then he and I flew back in formation with Steve and Kathy, and he flew the airplane on the way back.
So hand that microphone to him, Jack. So this is an experimental, a little smaller, obviously, than an L-39, but very fast, very aerobatic.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that flight.
Well, the flight was fun. Getting in and out of the airplane is pure murder for a 100-year-old.
Well.
Me being not quite as agile as I once was, it took 6 men and a boy to get me in and out of it. With the clamshell and the way it opens up, no windshield to grab a hold of, it was difficult. However, let me say this, it was well worth it. I had a few bruises, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. And flying with Keith was so much fun. It was bumpy as hell, and he flew formation on Steve and Kathy, and he did a beautiful job. And like I say, I would do it again no matter how many bruises I had. But it was murder getting in and out.
Did you get to stick a little bit in there? Did you get the feel of that airplane?
I did, but I didn't want to fly formation because it was so rough, and I couldn't get a feel of the throttle. I'd have to fly it away from the other airplane for a while to get the feel of the throttle before I dare fly formation. And that kind of rough, it was very, very rough.
So I'm guessing it's kind of touchy on the stick. I mean, little movements make big differences?
Probably, yeah. But it was very rough. But it's such a fun airplane. And it moves. I mean, this thing moves. We had a hell of a headwind going over and the tailwind coming back. But it's a beautiful airplane to fly. It's such fun.
Well, I could imagine
and
difficult.
It was so nice of them to come over and get me the way they did. But it was wonderful.
So I can imagine difficulties on the throttle. As Keith and I were talking earlier, it's 2,300 pounds or less, 2,300 pounds, and with 400 horsepower, little throttle adjustments make a big difference flying the airplane.
Yeah, I just couldn't get the feel of it when I was flying it.
So hand that back to Keith. I got just a couple more questions for him. So you obviously gave Jack the stick a little bit. How'd he do?
He did well. He flew the airplane well. The throttle is in the middle. So he was working it fine, and we just didn't get in close formation. But he flew the airplane. He's being too hard on himself. If everybody could fly as well as he would, I wouldn't have any problem with anybody.
So how many guys 100 years old have you flown with?
Well, I'll tell you, he's probably about the only one. I've flown with some old guys, and I'm an old fighter pilot myself. I'm not quite as old as he, but almost.
What?
And so we've had some like experiences. I flew the T6 in pilot training, which he instructed in the T6 for a long time. Then I went on later to be a fighter pilot. So
what'd you fly?
Well, I started out in 84s and 86s and F100s and 104s. And
oh wow, Super Sabre guy?
Yeah, Super Sabre.
Wow, that's cool. All right.
And I appreciate Jack and all of his stories because it's so real to me. And what I like about it, it's current history. Another 100 years, it'll all be secondhand information. His is right. I had a couple of combat tours in Vietnam, so I know what it is to fly when people are shooting at you.
Right.
It changes the whole scenario.
Right.
Jack?
Well, we appreciate your time coming over today and flying over, and I know Jack loved that flight. So here we are, Jack Hallett, 100 years old, still flying airplanes. I don't think he's done yet. We'll close this thing on up. See you in a bit. And those are the SX-300. Smoke on. So here we are. I'm Joel Hargis. This is Jack Hallett. We're on with the Florida Aviation Network today, and we've just recapped a trip down memory lane with Jack, flying with Jack Hallett between 94 and 100. We got to talk to some pretty cool pilots today, didn't we, Jack?
We did indeed.
And some great memories?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Be kind of hard to pick the best one, wouldn't it?
It'd be impossible.
Impossible to pick the best one. So I don't know. I've got a lot of friends that fly a lot of cool things and do a lot of fun things. But Jack, you may be the luckiest guy I know to be able to fly all this stuff. What do you think?
I don't think there's any question about it. I've been so fortunate since I started here and met with the people I've flown with. Think of anybody else my age that have flown all the different types of airplanes and met the different wonderful people that I've flown with. And to put up with me the way they have, nobody else is as lucky as I am. I wouldn't trade places with anybody in this wide world who have done what I've done. I have been the luckiest man on the face of this earth.
Well, and Jack, that's because you are so much fun to be around. We all love to hang out with you. I mean, we do a lot of things together. Most everybody that you saw in that trip down memory lane today are close friends of Jack's, and we do social things together. We fly together. We go out and eat. We watch movies. We do all kinds of things together, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
And so it's a great bunch of friends. I want to thank all of the pilots that came in and helped out today, and all of the ground crew. Ned Bowers for, letting us have access to his hangar and shooting some drone video. All of the crew, Bob and George, and, Ted for being around, and just everybody. So many of these guys flew in today for this show. I want to thank everybody, and stay tuned to the Florida Aviation Network. We got more things, good things, coming your way.